Well, children have been spending more time playing video games during this pandemic.
And now a study's looking at how they learn from video games and seeing if that same method could be used in a virtual classroom. Joining us to tell us more is child development expert and founder of Fit Learning, Kimberly Behrens. Kimberly, good morning.
Hi there. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
We're doing well. Bright and early. Thanks for joining us. So this correlation between education and also fun in the classroom, where does rubber meet the road on this subject?
Right. Well, it's always I wrote an article about this and it got a lot of attention in Working Mother magazine. And what I'll tell you is, it's always bad news about video games, if you know what I mean, especially now with kids spending, a large percentage more time on video games than they were previously. But, the point of my article was to understand that there's a reason kids become addicted to video games. And that is because video games are designed by behavioral science. They're designed according to the science behind the learning process. And unfortunately, this same science is not regularly applied to classroom instruction. And if it was, we'd be kind of having a lot more success with kids around, across the board in education, not just with respect to online learning, but with respect to what happens in classrooms.
And Kimberly, I think it's really important. You can't make light of the fact that this really is an addiction. I think it's, the video games as well as even your cell phones. I mean, this isn't, something they can just drop and walk away from. They literally will, they will fight to keep it.
Right. They absolutely will. So, the take-home point is really twofold. One is for educators to understand why kids become so addicted to particularly video games. And it really stems from how they're designed, which is that they're based on mastery or proficiency levels that are achieved, at every level of the game. So kids have the opportunity to engage in repeated, reinforced practice of the skills required to be really good at that level. And the reinforcer, there are lots of reinforcers built in for that practice inside each level. But then the grand reinforcer is being allowed to move to the next level and move into something more advanced. And in schools, this doesn't happen. In schools, kids are exposed to lots of content. Then they're tested on that content according to an arbitrary timeline that's, school districts set. And then all the kids move on at the same time, regardless of their level of mastery of the information. And so what that leads to is a cycle of disfluency or a failure to achieve mastery, which creates a lot of problems. And so video games are designed like that. Kids don't move up to more advanced content until they master previous levels. And that creates a proficiency at playing the game. And, we all like to do stuff we're good at. Expertise lends itself to wanting to engage in that again, over and over again. So if that same kind of design was applied to math and reading, kids would likely become more addicted to doing those things than they are, because they feel when things feel quite difficult, which is what happens when kids are just pushed along. That is something kids absolutely do not want to do. So, building mastery and proficiency via repeated reinforced practice is really essentials, and schools really need to get on board with this and redesign how instruction's going.
Yeah, it's tough to get upset as a parent of a student who's like, I just can't get enough of this algebra.
Right.
Exactly. I know. And another thing to think about is when you have something that a kid really wants to do, in behavioral science, we call that a powerful reinforcer. So, on one side of this is the teachers understanding how to build in more practice, more participation, and more reinforcement in lessons. But then on the parent side, it's understanding that when you have something that your child really loves, you should be designing a system in your household so that kids are earning access to that rather than having free access. And that's the biggest mistake parents make, is thinking that screen time is a right rather than a privilege that should be earned.
Yeah. Well, Kimberly, a breadth of information. I am terribly sorry to intrude on your information here. Where can we find more of that real quickly, as we are running out of information or out of time?
So, there's a lot of information about this on my website, drkimberlybehrens.com. And then I also recently wrote and published a book in October called Blind Spots:
Perfect.
Why Students Fail and the Science That Can Save Them. And all of that information is in the book, and you can find information on the book on my website.
That's great. Pick up the book.
Thanks, Kimberly. We appreciate it.
Yeah.